You've been awake for 19 hours, strapped into a seat the size of an economy recliner, and the only bed on this billion-dollar aircraft is 6 feet of canvas, an arm's length from the switch that releases the weapons underneath you. That's not a thought experiment. In September of 2001, that was Mel Deal's actual Tuesday, flying a B-2 Spirit from Missouri toward the other side of the planet on one of the first combat sorties of the war. But the real problem on a flight like his was never the bed. It was staying sharp enough to use it correctly, hour after hour, with no relief crew and no layover, for a day and a half straight. We'll get to the answer the Air Force reaches for when caffeine finally stops working. It's not what you'd guess. Start with the aircraft. The B-2 wasn't built for comfort, it was built to disappear off radar, and the inside reflects that. 2 seats, a pilot and a mission commander, surrounded by switches with nothing wasted on space. Behind them, a bulge in the fuselage just tall enough to stand in, holding a shoebox-sized microwave, a mini fridge, a chemical toilet with essentially no privacy, and a fold-down cot some crews swap for a padded camp bed they bring themselves because the government issue version wasn't built for tall pilots. That's rung 1 for D'Aile and his crewmate. Mildly absurd. A camp bed bolted into a stealth bomber, but it gets less funny fast because of who's missing. There are only 2 of them. No relief crew, no navigator, nobody else aboard. So when D'Aile's crewmate climbed onto that cot, D'Aile was alone, for hours, flying an aircraft that cost over $1 billion, over open ocean, with nobody to talk to and nobody to hand anything off to. The fly-by-wire system is automated enough to make that possible. It is not automated enough to make it easy. That isolation is the second rung, and it's the reason the sleep part of this story needs a different word. Because what happens on that cot is not sleep in any normal sense. Crews call it managed fatigue. Sessions run 2 to 3 hours at a time on a bed that's vibrating, inside an aircraft that's loud, with the full knowledge that you're going back on shift the second your body clock says otherwise. One former B-2 and B-52 pilot put it simply, after you've done a few of these, anything under 20 hours stops feeling like a big deal. That's not a brag. That's a person whose baseline for exhaustion has been recalibrated by the job. Now stack the actual physics on top of that. You're at altitude, breathing cabin air that's thinner than what you'd get at sea level, and altitude fatigue compounds regular fatigue in ways that are hard to separate once you're 20 hours in. Meals come from self-heating pouches, planned out in advance down to the calorie, because both eating too little and eating too much on a long sortie measurably affects how fast your brain works at hour 30. There's no galley, no cart coming down the aisle, nobody checking in on you. Whatever's in the pouch next to your seat is what you get for the next 1,500 miles. That's the food and the fatigue rung. Here's where it stops being about discomfort and starts being about whether the mission survives contact with a human nervous system. In September of 2001, a B-2 pilot named Mel D'Aile flew one of the first American combat sorties of the post-9/11 war, a mission that stretched to roughly 44 hours in the seat. He tanked at least 3 times mid-flight over Guam through the Strait of Malacca near Diego Garcia, trading naps with his crewmate the whole way. Decades later, in 2025, a formation of B-2s flew a version of the same problem on the strike against Iran's nuclear program, some crews airborne for well over 30 hours straight. Others swapped out after landing in Guam on missions that stretched past 70. Same aircraft, same 6 feet of canvas, same math, one generation apart. And this is where Whiteman Air Force Base keeps something on staff that most people don't expect. Actual flight physiologists, doctors whose entire job is studying how to keep a 2-person crew functional past the point where a normal human body starts making mistakes. Because by hour 25 or 30, caffeine has usually stopped being enough. And when it does, the Air Force doesn't leave the answer up to the individual pilot. Here's the detail most people never hear about, and it's the reason all those physiologists are on payroll in the first place. When rest, food, and coffee run out, flight surgeons can prescribe what crews call go pills. Dextroamphetamine, a regulated stimulant, dosed and monitored, cleared for exactly this use case, because the alternative is a pilot's reaction time degrading somewhere over an ocean with no divert field for 1,000 miles. It's not a workaround somebody found. It's written into how the Air Force manages ultra-long-range missions, and it's been part of the program for years. The same crews who eat ration pouches and nap in 2-hour blocks are, on the worst end of a 40-hour sortie, doing it partly on a prescription drug designed for exactly this. That's the edge of the ladder, not the cot, not the toilet everyone jokes about. The fact that keeping a nuclear-capable stealth bomber in the air for a day and a half sometimes comes down to pharmacology, signed off by a doctor, planned before the wheels ever leave Missouri, and once you know that, the cot stops looking absurd and starts looking like the easy part. The hard part is that there's no door on any of it. No door between the seat and the bed, no door between the mission and the rest. Whoever's awake is fully responsible the entire time for an aircraft neither of them can walk away from until the wheels touch down at home. So the next time you hear that a B-2 flew 40 hours non-stop, the image probably isn't a pilot gritting through it on willpower alone. It's 2 people trading a 6-foot cot in shifts, eating out of a pouch, watching the clock, and knowing that somewhere past hour 25, staying sharp might not be a choice they get to make on their own anymore. Was flying that mission worth what it cost those 2 men to stay conscious through it? The Air Force clearly thinks so. Whether you would is a different question entirely.